K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at sales@k98fm.com.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can. Our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
It got up to like $68,000. My heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
Game on, where progressives fear us and rhinos tremble. Welcome to the political jungle. I'm JD.
This is Stacey. No one is safe. No one is spared.
Lock up the children.
And the old folk.
Welcome to the world of liberservative conservatarians.
That's right, everybody. You're listening to JD and Stacey here on K98 Talk on Game On, the show that is so good everybody sticks around for an extra 10 minutes even when we're having server issues. Good evening, Tuesday, July 14th, 2015. Again, JD and Stacey. Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Here on K98 Talk. So much going wrong in the world today. But tonight, my favorite freaks, political geeks and back alley sneaks, we are, first of all, all of you freaks right now, get over to K98Talk.com and get in that chat room, baby. Talk to that Stacey. Have Stacey apologize for them that Ricky Ticky, Tavi, Rick Robinson server issues, baby. Oh, good Lord. Tonight, though, Stacey and I have a very special guest that we're going to introduce to you in a few minutes. It is Mr. Josef Levine. He is live to you tonight from, our tonight, his very early this morning from Israel. The man got up at 2:45 in the morning. He fed all the chickens and the goats. Then he wrote a novel. For those of you who heard his first interview with us, Mr. Levine is a document translator that has worked closely with the Israeli government, the military, intelligence services, private businesses, and do not let me forget, the man also translates at least one novel a month. As always, remember you can catch catch us here every Tuesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Time here on Game On K98 Talk with JD and Stacey. Catch us again Thursday night live for Game On at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Sunday, baby, we switch them gears for that Bloody Marys and broadsheets, your cure for that mainstream media hangover. And as always, not now when you're on the show, because now you're in the chat room. But you got to get over to Spreaker.com, get the hashtag, what is it, Stacey?
JD and Stacey, JD and Stacey.
No, not because we have a really cool guest on. Say it like you're supposed to say it. JD and Stacey, JD and Stacey, JD and Stacey, JD and Stacey.
I can't do it like you do. But you're like being completely ignored because Joseph's in the chat room. So.
Oh my God, we're going to bring him in a second. One of my favorite guests. I've told him that myself, but there's so much breaking news. You know, Scott Walker announced. Stacey and I are going to move that. We're going to cover that on Thursday. That's how much is going on in the world. As you have a presidential announcement from a major candidate, and Josef Levine is actually a bigger guest and get. Why is that? Because the Little Sisters of the Poor lost their lawsuit, but we don't have time to talk about that. What the hell else were we going to talk about before?
Well, and I had to watch Hillary.
Oh, that's what it was.
We watched the whole hour to prep for tonight. Down the toilet, 60 minutes. I will never get back.
Oh my God! Let me. I have to tell you something. Listening for that woman for an hour makes me realize why her husband was getting blown by fat chicks off the Oval Office. Ugh. But Stacey, what?
Yes.
What is it that directly brings us to bring Mr. Josef Levine to our audience tonight? Who's back in the news? Wait.
I guess
wait.
if I.
Who's back in the news?
Oh, the Durkas.
Oh, Durka.
Right, because they want everybody in the world to go see the
Virgin.
And now John Kerry thinks there'll never be a. All right, what do we need a guess for? That just summed up the Iran nuke deal.
There we go. I mean, in all reality, I would have rather gone through Hillary's speech in its entirety again, so I could have taken it and deconstructed it point by point, than have woken up this morning and found out we actually did this.
I went to bed to this because I was up and I was, you know what, we'll share with the audience. I was just about to fall into a nice deep sleep. Well, no, I was trying to sleep, then I couldn't sleep, and then I went for a drive, and then I got a call, and then I was laughing with my lovely co-host, and then she went, okay, I got stuff to do, bye, and went to bed. Then I was
Diane was there, too.
Diane was there, too, and I got, yes, folks, it was a threesome. And I was all wound up, and it was like 3 in the morning, and I'm like, what should I do? And my phone went off, and I went, and I looked, and it was breaking from the Wall Street Journal that John Kerry had finally bent over far enough he could see his own ass, and it was time for Obama to sign off on this.
I think he could see his tonsils.
Oh, my God, on this incomprehensive piece of what they are calling, this is not a nuclear deal. This is not a treaty. This is basically, the title of this piece of garbage is the Joint Comprehensive, here's the optimum word, plan of action.
Yeah, but once you get down the preface to 36 and 37, it blows up the whole thing anyway. So it's never going to happen.
Listen, Stacey and I plan on taking out Mark Levin, Rush Limbaugh, and Sean Hannity, but it's not going to happen in a 75-page treatise. Now, is it, darling?
No, it's not. I read it.
Oh well, we'll get into that. I think that this is the perfect opportunity. I'd like to welcome to the audience Mr. Josef Levine, live from us right now at a god-awful pre-dawn hour from Beth Shemesh, Israel. Josef, are you still with us?
I'm here.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to the program. Welcome back to the program. You know, I listened to our last interview from when you were kind enough to come on after the last election and give our audience a nice explanation about that. And at the end of it, I said to you, hey, man, would you mind being our Eastern correspondent at large? And you were like, yeah, sure. And here you are for that very, very reason. Welcome back.
At 5 o'clock in the morning, no less.
No, it's actually really beautiful now. The sun is just starting to come up. It's really, really nice out.
Enjoy it. I don't know how many sunrises are left on the planet after today.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Stacey, where would you? Well, first of all, Josef, for those in the audience who didn't hear you the first time around, why don't you give everybody a little bit of a background about yourself, who you are, what you do, how we came to find you, basically your whole life from birth up until today.
Sure. Well, let's see. I grew up here. I grew up in Jerusalem. I was actually born in the United States, but we moved, we that was more of an accident than anything else. And and then we came here. My grandparents are American. So, English was one of the languages we spoke at home, but we also spoke Hebrew, obviously, and Yiddish. So I grew up in Jerusalem, and then I did a lot of traveling as a child. I mean, I spent a little bit of time in Chicago as a child. I also spent some time in the D.C. area. And now I live in Bet Shemesh, although we're getting ready to move. I think we're getting ready to move to Herzliya, which is just north of Tel Aviv, because my fiance just got a new job.
Because Netanyahu's prime minister and Obama's not running the economy, so, there's work.
Oh, yeah. The truth is that there is work here. There really is. The unemployment rate here is fairly low. I think it's at 6%. I'm not sure exactly what it is right now. Well, anyway, yeah, I'm a translator. Most of my time is spent doing document translation. I have several companies. Basically, I'm on retainer. They pay for an X number of hours up front, then they just mail me documents whenever they need to. On occasion, I have to go to the offices if it's the sort of document that they won't send over mail. And I also translate, books, movies, any project of that sort, what I call the long-term projects. And that's it. And then on occasion, I also give English lessons to businessmen, meaning not exactly English lessons so much as cultural training. Learning how to bridge the gap between the Israeli culture and the American culture, which are similar cultures, but there's still enough of a difference between the two.
Right. And it's not just Yiddish, Hebrew, and English you speak. You also have a few other languages under your belt?
Yeah, well, I mean, I speak German. I speak Spanish fairly well. I speak Arabic. Those are the main languages that I work with. I wanted to try to add Russian to that because there's such a large amount of Russian speakers here in Israel, but it's a very, very time-consuming language to master, and I don't see any business value in it at this point. There are enough fluent Russian, Hebrew, English speakers that I'm not gonna really penetrate that market. So I might do it for my own fun later on, but for now I'll just stick to
There's no reason to spend all the money on the Rosetta Stone program because, again, after today, if there are many more sunrises, we may all be speaking Russian at some point anyway.
Or Persian.
Oh my God, I can't. I draw the absolute line out. Where's my Durkas? Where are they? Durkas.
Oh, Durka.
There you. That's all the Persian I'm ever going to speak is Durka.
Well, don't forget Baba Ganoush.
Baba Ganoush, yeah. There you go.
Oh, don't get no. We can't be happy here. Damn it, the world's ending. We'll get to a funny laughing part later. Stacey, why don't you set up for everybody why when we were speaking, Stacey and I had an entire show structure and everything set up. And when this broke about the administration, and again, not a treaty, I think it's not even an executive order. Somebody correct me in the chat room if I'm wrong about this. I think in order to get 1/3 of one of the houses to approve this, it's literally called an executive action, not an executive order. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But as soon as Stacey and I spoke about this morning, we knew that this was the story. And we knew that Josef was the only guest to have. We didn't think it would be possible with the time difference, but we want to thank him again. Stacey, why don't you take, there's not a lot of pages to this because, like I said, it's just a joint comprehensive plan of action. But why don't you step into it a little bit and start to get some of Josef's take on this?
Sure. Well, I mean, Josef, if you could recall and just set up, because we do have some folks in chat not have an opportunity to hear you speak before. When we originally spoke, we talked about the negotiations and the negotiation process. Could you just remind the folks that did hear before and maybe give a little bit of a summary to the folks that are here tonight, why you personally see negotiating as U.S. and European diplomats with the Iranians is maybe not such a great idea. You know, how honest are they going to be? How transparent? And what are some of the cultural reasons for that?
Right. Yeah, we spoke about that last time. One of the fundamental differences between the Western culture and the Middle Eastern culture, and arguably to the Far East as well, is that there's an extent in the Middle Eastern culture to which honesty is considered relative, that the degree of honesty that I am obligated to show to an outside party is lower than the amount of honesty I need to show to a member of my inner circle. That's just part of the culture. I think I don't know how to compare it to anything that one finds in the United States. It's just so completely different. But I'll try to give you a classic example. If you're speaking with an Iranian or a Persian, an Afghan, anybody from that far over, from the Persian Empire and farther east, and you ask them about their day, you ask them about their work, etc., they're going to tell you the truth. They're not. I'm not in any way suggesting that they're dishonest people. But if you show up in Afghanistan and say, "Okay, I plan to restructure your form of government. Are you going to cooperate?" They're not going to draw their sword and scream to the heavens and declare war on you. They're going to say, "Sure, of course, we'll be more than happy to cooperate." And then they'll slowly undermine the processes. And they consider that perfectly appropriate. Number one, because you're not part of their circle. Number two, because you're coming in and trying to change things. You're coming in and you're trying to affect change to their culture and their way of life. The same thing with any kind of negotiation of this sort. If you come to Iran and say, "Okay, we've been strangling your economy for the better part of, I don't know what it is now, 10 years, and you've got people who can't find work, and the government itself can barely afford to support all the terror that it needs to support. How do we get money for more terror?" Well, we'll promise anything.
Right.
They'll promise anything, and again, it's not considered a wrong thing to do. So I see somebody on the chat room asked if that's the same thing as taqiyya. Taqiyya is a little bit more complicated than that. Taqiyya has to do specifically with Islam and the things that they're allowed to mislead listeners about when it comes to Islam itself. But the concept is pretty similar. Yeah, the idea of a convenient untruths. The fact that I can say whatever is in my best interest to serve my needs. It's sort of like somebody saying, "I'll do whatever I need to do for my family and for my relatives, even if it's morally inappropriate." You see what I mean?
Absolutely, and
absolutely
the cultural. And folks, we're gonna have Josef for the better part of the whole segment. So I know everybody's chomping at the bit to get into some of the details of the deal, and we will. But I want to stay a little bit here on culture, because what's important to me is that look, you guys are directly in the line of fire, and Josef speaking to us live from Beth Shemesh right now. What's it, about 20 after 4 your time, 20 after 5 in the morning?
It's 20. Yeah, it's close to 5:30. Yeah.
Okay, so you guys are directly in the line of fire, and you're closest to the blast area, so to speak. But it's not just Israel and the U.S. and the European member states and Russia and China. The whole world's eyes are and were watching this process. So, I want you, from that cultural point of view, where you said it's okay in that culture to kind of, so long as you're getting what you want, it's basically the means to the end is acceptable. But with the rest of the ends, right?
Yes, but the ends justify the means in the Middle Eastern culture, particularly when dealing with outsiders. So it's far more offensive. You have to understand, it's far more offensive for a Persian to lie to a fellow Persian. That's rarely called for. But to an American, to a non-Muslim, non-Persian, remember, as you can see, they don't really get along with other Muslims either. Remember that the Persian Muslims, these are basically your Shiite Muslims, the Persian Muslims, whereas the Sunnis are for the most part Arab or wherever the Arab arm has reached, by way of conquest. But it's let's think about how far away we're going. It's a non-Muslim country. It's a declared enemy. It's somebody that's strangling the economy. It's denying them access to nuclear materials. There's 1.5 million reasons why you can say and do whatever it is you'd like. Now, there's another point, which I think is what JD was referring to, which is the moment that you do capitulate, then you're seen as weak. You're seen as vulnerable. And every capitulation
that's my point.
Causes you to lose more and more esteem in the eyes of the Persian, or really anybody in the Middle East. I mean, that's true even here in Israel. I mean, if you consistently capitulate, you're seen as weak and you're seen as vulnerable. And then you're treated accordingly. I mean, I see that all the time in the business world. When I negotiate a price on let's say how to things of that sort. If I capitulate once, it's going to lead the how do I put it? It's going to lead the negotiator to assume that every single time, he can just there's a word in Hebrew. It's called lidfok. He can like hammer.
It's pretty close to the word we use here in the States. But now specifically, and I want you to stay specifically to Persian culture. So, for people who don't understand and please correct me if I'm wrong about this, Joseph, but, there have been periods of time throughout since the Iranian Revolution in the late 70s, where you would have mostly student-based movements that would rise up as dissidents and kind of look to the West or look to the U.S. as almost like a partner, as please help give us some freedoms, and they're brutally repressed. From a Persian mindset, you do have people in Iran who are not fans of the regime, who are also looking at these negotiations through the same lens that you were describing culturally. Does that now lend any remaining dissident movement that may be inside Iran to start casting their eyes elsewhere, or to consider themselves closed for business because of how weak the U.S. has looked through that Persian lens?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. I don't know that there is anywhere else they can turn. I mean, for the better part of the 20th century, America was the moral compass. It was the place you turned when you wanted to uproot evil in your own country, whether that was, in the Serbian conflicts, etc., and here in Israel as well. Now, I don't know what they could possibly do now. I mean, we saw how many of them were killed during the last major protests in Iran. Where are they supposed to turn? These young, idealistic Iranian students, many of whom have a Western education, many of whom are desperate to just have a normal country and live, in a functional democracy. I really don't know where they could possibly turn. What they know now is that the America of today is easily manipulated. It's not Ronald Reagan's America.
No.
And because
it's not.
It's Jimmy Carter. It's Jimmy Carter's America, and because of that, their confidence in America as a leader is going to plummet. And then I don't know where they can. I don't know where they can turn. I mean, they're not going to turn to Israel. Which is the only other democracy in the region. Maybe Turkey? I don't know. I doubt it.
Stacey and I are turning to Israel. Don't say don't turn to Israel. I mean, hell, we might have a draft BB ticket after this first debate over here.
Yeah, right. Well,
I keep telling people on Twitter, I'd like to do one of these swaps like you guys do in baseball. I'd like to bring in Trey Gowdy for 5 years in exchange for BB. I'll give you BB and a first round draft pick
Ooh, Stacey. Stacey, I'm going to tell you what. I think that this is a perfect spot here for us to go to a break. I want all right. All you sports fans in the chat room, go argue with yourself because Gowdy is a really good pick. Let's try to shake the Israelis down for BB and better than one draft pick. When we come back on the other side, we're going to have Josef Levine coming back. Stacey is going to come back in with the nuclear deal. And I don't know if we covered this with Josef before the break, but the question is, yes, anything you say to us while the commercials are on, the audience can hear. See in 2.5 minutes, kids.
If you like your health care plan, you'll be able to keep your health care plan. This is the most transparent administration in history. Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you got a business, you didn't build that.
The feeling most people get when they hear a Barack Obama speech, I felt this thrill going up my leg. I don't have that too often.
Steady.
It's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. Ricky Robinson, host of America Off the Rails, will tackle the important issues facing America today as he tries to keep America from coming off the track. Get ready to hear the truth every Monday through Friday starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, here on K98Talk.com and the Spark Radio Network.
Welcome to the face. Welcome to the face of the new democracy.
Red Nation Rising brings you Town Hall Radio.
From a single tweet to 3 million a month, our community is a force to be reckoned with on social media.
So don't miss our show, Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern on K98 Talk.
Our chat room is our co-host, and you ask the question.
Join us and be heard.
So get ready to sound off on Red Nation Rising Radio. No one else is going to do it for you.
There's a wild, wild whisper blowing in the wind, calling out my name like a long lost friend.
Are you conservative in a world of liberal?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're not alone. Hey, I'm Daniel Stafford, host of the Stafford Voice, and I'd like to invite you to tune in each Monday, 10 p.m. Eastern, where I'll break down the events of the week, and together we'll learn about how they affect you. So, sit back and get ready for the good, the bad, and the ugly of talk radio right here on K98 Talk.
And welcome back, everybody, here to Game On with JD and Stacey on K98 Talk. Everybody, right now, open up another browser in that window in that browser, whatever the hell the kids call it, the Google, the Infacto box, the interwebs. Listen, shut off the porno movie, open up the thing, get into K98Talk.com right now, get into the chat room, and remember, kids, once the show is over, go to Spreaker.com, hashtag JD and Stacey. You can find all of our great things here on K98 Talk. And don't forget to catch us this Thursday night live, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our second edition of Game On. And as always, we want to thank Radio Red Nation Rising, baby. That's our lead in there, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday. So Thursday night, kids, you have not 1 hour with JD and Stacey. You got 2 hours of block time here on K98 Talk. I want to welcome back our very special guest, Mr. Josef Levine, live with us right now from Beth Shemesh, Israel. I feel like John Batchelor. We are live here with Josef Levine from Beth Shemesh, where he's coming to us with breaking news from Israel.
Oh my God! You were so in love with your own impression there. He just had to come back.
Listen, just end it with I'm in love with myself, and we can do that. How's that?
Oh my goodness! And be careful, Joseph. I would trade you a truckload of falafel for John Boehner.
Have you ever had proper Israeli falafel?
Yes, actually in France.
Okay, well that's
the gentleman was from Israel, so I'm assuming he knew how to make it.
Absolutely. In France, you're going to get good Middle Eastern food. I had a falafel, or what they tried to pass as a falafel one time in Washington D.C., and oh my, it's just. I don't know. Maybe it's the same. Maybe the same thing happens here when we try to make an American hamburger or something like that.
You two, listen to
horrible.
me. Listen to me. Listen to me. Listen to me.
Oh, God.
New York. Let me tell you something. New York City, for all its foibles and problems, and the New York Post had a picture of the homeless guy pissed away because we're basically rocketing right back to the 70s. I will tell you something. You can get good falafel and halal in this city about every 9 feet. You really can.
That's true. That's true. There's no question about that. New York,
All right.
New York has great food.
Okay, moving on from Boehner and falafel, because I would take a
No
truckload
more
in
Boehner and
exchange. We were talking a little bit before the break. One of the juxtapositions we see here, right, is the blah, blah, blah coming out of our administration about how this is a good deal and the Iranians are going to do X, Y, and Z. And then immediately, because the Iranian government, is on Twitter and sending their own messages, and we certainly see things through the Middle Eastern press, you see a directly contradictory statement.
Right.
To what you're hearing from the Western press and the Western diplomats. So when you're dealing in that environment, are we supposed to take a little bit of what we see at that level as showmanship, and for public consumption? Or is it really that much of a dichotomy in terms of what they say and what they mean?
Okay, well, I'm sure that there's a certain amount of political maneuvering. I think this always happens when you have secret negotiations between two countries. Obviously, we're not exposed to every single tiny detail, and we don't know all of the ins and outs of what actually happened during those negotiations. But generally speaking, I can tell you that the extent to which they will feel obligated to remain true to what's on a piece of paper, where they're not sworn to that piece of paper. They're not religiously sworn to that piece of paper. It's just a piece of paper. You know what we're talking about? This is like a compulsive cheater signing a marriage license. What does
Donald
that
Trump?
mean? Think about that for a second. The guy cheats. Who cares if he's married? This is what we're talking about. We're talking about people who will, sure, we'll sign it. No, why not? It can't stop me. And I think one of the things I think something you need to bear in mind. Have you ever seen a political, like some sort of protest in Iran? You ever notice that they don't just burn Israeli flags? They always burn American flags as well.
Oh, yeah. Big
They
Satan.
were
Little
doing
Satan.
it during the negotiations.
Right.
They're doing
Big
it.
Satan and Little Satan.
That's right. Israel is not Iran's biggest enemy. Not by their view of the world. We're the extension of what they see as the American imperialistic arm.
You're a proxy.
Like a minor settlement in this part of the world of the big problem, which is America. At the end of the day, there's a lot more hatred for America than there is there in Israel. There is for Israel. And I don't know why that's also not being spoken about. I know people are concerned, the safety of Israel, etc. What about the safety of the United States? How does America benefit from this deal?
They don't.
That's the crazy. Listen. Objectively speaking, as an Israeli, I can complain all I want about the fact that Obama signed a deal that was bad for Israel. But in fairness, he's not really obligated as the president of the United States to sign a deal that's good for a different country. It would be in the spirit of alliance. But objectively speaking, if the complaint is that it's not good for a third country, that's not the worst thing in the world. But it's not good for America. It's dangerous for the United States.
Joseph, you in the last interview that you did with us were very gracious in breaking down the Israeli political system, what it means to be prime minister, coalition governments, elections, votes of confidence, etc. And I'm glad you just touched on that point, because here in the States, as everybody well knows, that the President of the United States is not just the president. He is also the commander-in-chief of the United States Armed Forces. His oath that he has taken twice upon being duly elected by the people of this country in 2008 and 2012. I don't know how, but he was. And both of those times, in his oath, he takes an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, as well as the homeland itself. And you bring this point of what exactly does the United States get in this deal? And I would like to go back to the point, folks. It's not a treaty. It is not. It does not have to get. No, it does not have to get the 3/4 threshold that you would in a treaty. Why? Because you can't even sell this to most Democrats. This is not. This is basically going to be called an executive agreement or an executive action. The way that that's approved mechanically here is that all the president needs is 1/3 of either house to approve. So they can go venue shop of where to get this quote, joint comprehensive plan of action, unquote. Plan being the optimal word. There is more language spent in this document talking about sanctions relief than there is about weaponization or proliferation of nuclear material. The term Iran, where is it? The plan is optimal. Iran intends, the phrase Iran intends appears 6 times in this agreement, which stops at about page 75, and when it goes on through 100 and page 60 is basically annexes and listings of the names of companies that are going to have sanctions reliefs. So, Joseph, let's circle back to the meat and potato, the vagary of this agreement, where you have language such as Iran intends 6 times, but you actually have the word shall appearing twice in the document, and neither time are you guys still with us?
Yeah, neither time shall Iran do anything.
Exactly, but I think we lost Joseph here for a second.
Did we?
Yeah.
I still have him.
Well, then why isn't he talking, young lady?
I don't know.
All right, so why don't you go in a little bit about the deal here while I try to get Joseph back on the line.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at even just the preface, there's a final sentence in that document that maybe just kind of go, huh? And that is that this agreement will produce the comprehensive lifting of all UN Security Council sanctions as well as multilateral and national sanctions. So it's not just the UN, it's also everything that individual countries have done to sanction Iran. With that, and any sanctions that are put on related to Iran's nuclear program, including steps on access in areas of trade, technology, finance, and energy. So it's basically taking anything that any nation or the UN itself has done and trying to put it. Hang on.
No, I got a call trying to go out to him right now. Just continue with what you were saying.
I was going to say he was trying to call me.
Hello?
So.
Oh, you're back.
Oh, there you are.
There you guys are. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I want to recommend. I want to recommend.
Beit Shemesh is right near a one of the Air Force bases, and every once in a while, when the F-16s fly overhead, the internet goes out for like 20 seconds. Happens once or twice a day. They have some sort of jamming mechanism. I don't know. You know how we are with technology.
We call that here the sound of freedom, baby. But as a side note, anybody who is ever considering doing a radio show, I highly recommend you getting yourself a Stacey Lennox, because anybody that can fill with that kind of detail while the producer goes and brings the guest back, let me tell you something. Everybody out there listening to me right now, suck it. You can't beat it. But Joseph, where I wanted you to pick up when you had cut off, and I'll make it a shorter version, in the deal itself, the term Iran intends appears 6 times, and the term shall only appears twice, and neither one of the times where the word shall appears is it a hard dictate to Iran and to the regime. The heavy water production facilities mentioned in Iraq are completely vague, and you have Iran sitting on a panel wherein they can hold off IAEA inspectors for 24 days. I'd like you to comment from both your professional... I was going to say,
not just that. They're sitting on the panel for any dispute, and if you can't resolve the dispute with an Iranian on the panel, then the whole thing is null and void.
Right. I would like you to speak both from your professional and just personal experience as an Israeli citizen as to what the details or the vagary, as you've heard them so far, means to you, both from what you've seen with your work with the government and the military and your point of view as a citizen.
Well, first of all, in terms of language, I mean, anybody who's ever had to translate a legal document or a government document knows that the language can be quite contorted to begin with. That's done on purpose. I mean, that's done to make it, to provide a certain amount of flexibility, etc. And I would be most curious, really, is to see the Iranian version, the Persian version of the, how it's written out in Farsi, because I suspect that the two documents are not the same.
That's a great point.
And unfortunately, without, I don't speak Farsi. I only know a few words of Farsi, but without a good translation from one document to the other, the disputes there alone can pretty much allow Iran to do whatever they want, and they know that. You guys there?
Yeah, no, it was.
Okay. It was just another F-16 just flew by, so I wasn't sure.
Sound freedom. Pick up from they know that.
Now that's the first thing. Now, secondly, I also think that you have to bear in mind that this is, look, anywhere in the world, this is how you negotiate. You just keep pushing back. You keep pushing back until the person capitulates a little bit more. What you expect is that at a certain point, the person puts his foot down and says, no, 50,000 is my minimum, or in this case, it's not going to be 24 days, it's going to be 4 days, or whatever the case may be. But what the Iranians recognized very early on is that Barack Obama, the person, is so desperate for a legacy, so desperate for something that he can point to and say, look, I did this and it worked.
And just as an aside, audience, if you doubt that at all, there was a Free Beacon article earlier this week about a conference call that they had in advance of the agreement talking about how important it was to Obama's legacy with a bunch of leftist Democrats. I'll put it out on my TL if you're interested.
Absolutely, and again, Bibi last night, that's actually what I was listening to when we first started talking. Bibi last night gave a speech in Hebrew, in which he said that the desire to sign the agreement was greater than the desire to achieve any meaningful results. And I think the Iranians picked up on that a long time ago. And when you have that, in this part of the country where negotiation is an everyday thing, where it's just part of our blood. I mean, you negotiate. You don't have that in the United States. You don't go to the market and negotiate the price of the tomatoes. I mean, you see a sign that says what the price is, you pay for your tomatoes, and you move on. Here, everything is negotiable. In this entire area of the world, everything is negotiable, and it's in our blood. And so when we smell that desperation, that this person needs to sell this more than I need to buy it, I mean, you can get any price you want, and it's no different at the global scale. It's no different at the political scale. You're talking about a group of people who are looking at a man who's so desperate to walk away from his presidency with something that he can point to and say, I made a difference on the global, I made a difference to the world, that they said, okay, well, you want to make a difference to the world? All you need is a piece of paper. But here's what we want in exchange. And then they just keep piling on the demands.
Well, he's made a difference in the world, okay? I mean, I guess as a citizen of the United States, when I look at it, and Bibi Netanyahu and the King of Saudi Arabia have the same view
right.
on a foreign policy initiative, wouldn't that, and you live there, wouldn't that give a person with a modicum of common sense a little bit of pause?
It's funny that you say that. My fiance and I were looking at an article a couple of days ago about secret negotiations that the Saudi Arabians and the Israelis have had with some prodding from Sisi from Egypt, and and I not jokingly said it's a funny world where Egypt and Saudi Arabia are turning to Israel for guidance and advice on a geopolitical matter with the United States. And that's a straight. If you told somebody from my parents' generation that Israel would be cooperating with Egypt and Saudi Arabia against the direction that America is taking the world, I think they would have been quite shocked. How could that even happen? It's only 2015. I mean, it's only been 30 years, 35 years since the peace agreement with Egypt, and Saudi Arabia still doesn't even recognize Israel as officially Israel is not recognized by Saudi Arabia. And yet they've offered airspace. They've offered use of the airspace. There were reports that some of the bombing done over Yemen was done by Israeli planes. Now, again, I don't know if that's true, but the people reporting it really had no reason to lie about that specific detail. And you can tell Israeli planes from the air versus Saudi Arabian planes. I mean, they look completely different.
If there's a God in heaven, those F-16s that cut you off right now are flying to blow some mullahs back into the 4th century where they belong. But picking back up on strange bedfellows and where it's driving people, one of the questions that I've had resonating in my head is that, and I think this goes back to, you beautifully laid out what is a Persian cultural worldview, mindset, the lens they view things are. I know you're not a spokesman for the Persian culture or the Persian people, but being of that region is something that you definitely have an understanding of. And so here you have a president. Let's talk about our president's worldview. He does believe that this country and its military capability are the cause of many ills in the world, and that they have been historically. And although not ever a colonial power, the current commander-in-chief that sits in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue actually looks at us as a vile, militaristic, colonial-type power. So, again, going back to what do we get out of this from a national security standpoint, answer is nothing. As a matter of fact, we're about to see being the hegemon in that region probably for about the last 40 or so years. And you can have an argument as to whether or not you want to be tied up in that mess. But when you speak about strange bedfellows, and when you talk about giving up the hegemony of a region that you've tried your best to at least have your own national interest and keep somewhat of a tamper down of what's going on, the only other two world powers to my mind that you would turn to if the U.S. was pulling back, withdrawing, or not what you thought it had been in the past, who are we going to by default start driving towards China and towards Russia that should have been natural allies of the U.S.?
Yeah, it's actually very interesting that you say that, because I don't know about Russia. Russia and Israel is a problematic situation, but I will tell you that China, the number of recent Israeli-Chinese meetings and deals at the business level, in the past year and a half or 2 years, it's increased by like 150 to 200%. All sorts of companies out there now are looking at the Chinese market. Israel, for lack of a better term, is basically hedging its bets and saying, who knows what's going to happen. I mean, I want to tell you something. On the Israeli street, so to speak, there's a lot of talk about whether the United States is the new Roman Empire, right, which, through bad deal after bad deal and bad leader after bad leader eventually just fell apart. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of talk about that now, whether it may be time to start slowly tiptoeing back from the United States and toward China, in particular because there's a certain amount of assumed dependency on the part of the Israeli-American relationship. There's this sense that a lot of Israelis are sick of, that Israel can't exist without the United States, like a small child that's dependent on its parent. And maybe that was true in the 70s and the 80s. I don't know how true it is anymore. I mean, we're a global leader in technology. We're a global leader in weapons development, and I think Israelis are getting a little bit tired of the attitude. I mean, this stopped feeling like an alliance quite a while ago. And I think that if in the next 4 years, in other words, in the next presidency, American-Israeli relations don't take a sharp turn back toward how they were in the 80s and early 90s, we're going to see a lot more negotiations between Israel and China, and even between, like I mentioned on the chat, between Israel and Saudi Arabia, between Israel and Jordan, Israel and Egypt. I mean, Egypt, Sisi has been a better friend to Israel over the past couple of years than Obama. You know, he's helped over and over and over again in Sinai and with Gaza, with the tunnels, etc. And Israelis are asking. I mean, the average Israeli is asking the question. Maybe it's time, like a 19 or 20-year-old, to move out of the house known as the United States and go out on our own. And I don't really think that's in anybody's best interest. But there's a point at which you just get sick and tired of the behavior.
Well, it goes back to
Joseph,
you. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Stacey. No, go ahead, Stacey.
I was going to say, part of this deal, and just to kind of circle it back to the position that your country is in, is an influx of cash. And Iran is often thought of as the largest, sponsor in the world of terrorism.
Right.
What is the Israeli perception of what that means for your security and your border and Hezbollah and all those other neat players that
so you know what I want to do? I'm looking here at a headline from Israel Hayom. Israel Hayom translates to Israel Today. It's one of the most commonly read newspapers in Israel. I mean, they hand them out for free at the train stations and bus stations, etc. And everybody reads Israel Hayom. And the front page, title on the internet here, it says Yom HaKalon, which means Day of Infamy. And it says here, I'm just reading and translating at the same time, the 14th of July, 2005 will be remembered as the day that the worldwide sponsor of terror received international permission to continue its operations around the world. That's the report in Israel's most commonly read newspaper. I mean, just to put this into context, this is an article by Boaz Bismuth, and I'm just continuing here in the article. I just want to read a couple of, just to give you a sense of somebody other than myself. Oh, sorry, here goes the internet again screaming at me. All right, so it starts out here. He starts out by quoting Roosevelt's famous December 7th speech, "Day that will live in infamy," or whatever it is, and he says that. Says that the same sentiment can be said about the 14th of July, 2015. Hard to believe this is the same day that the French celebrate their independence. Now it will of their independence to I have to read this in Hebrew first. לטירוף המהפכני של הרפובליקה האסלאמית, to the revolutionary madness of the Islamic Republic. That's the way that he put it. And then he says here, near the bottom, the president, meaning the president of the United States, the president decided yesterday to enjoin, meaning to place Iran on a list of global players, essentially guaranteeing funding in upwards of hundreds of billions of dollars for terrorism. And then he concludes the article, I'm just summarizing, and history will never forgive him for that decision. That's the attitude. That's the attitude you're getting from just a standard newspaper.
And I imagine the headlines in Saudi Arabia and Egypt and a few other countries might not look that different.
That is a scary, pointed, and morbid place to leave it now, because JD, Stacey, and that Ricky Tikki Tavi Rib Rockers in the K98 Talk got them paid advertising. We got to keep it close here on that 1 hour show. We want to thank Josef Levine for getting up very early, coming to us live from Beth Shemesh, Israel. Joseph, I would appreciate it if you got some time, stick around in the chat room. I'm sure the folks would love to continue the conversation. Stacey and I are going to jump off here. We're going to do a little station ID and wrap up the show. Thank you very, very much. Everybody follow Joseph at Rabbi, RABBI 224 on the Twitters. And you got anything you're pushing or promoting right now, Joseph?
Not really, unless you actually. I'll say there's a fascinating book coming out that I translated called The Final Redeemer. If you're interested in Judaism and Messianic culture and sort of some of the differences between Judaism and Christianity when it comes to the idea of a Messiah, look out for a book called The Final Redeemer. It was written by Professor Alon Dahan, and I translated it from the Hebrew, and it's really a brilliant book. So look for that, and I think it's going to be on Amazon by next month.
We cannot thank you enough for joining us again tonight. And like I said, please stick around in the chat room. The folks were very, very anxious to see you. You are up. You've had your coffee. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Josef Levine. Joseph, thank you very, very much, and we hope you'll be back very soon.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you, Joseph.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Joseph. Ooh, Stacey, I
need the keys. We need to get out of here. I feel like I need a drink.
But wait, before we do that, I mean, not only we have to thank Joseph. That was an incredible interview. Thursday, we're going to be talking to Scott Walker announce. Everybody, Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, get over America Off the Rails, that Ricky Tikki Tavi Rick Robinson. He's going to be interviewing former Governor John Sununu. And then Thursday night, right before us, you're going to have J.D. Winteregg being interviewed by Radio Nation Rising, Jared and Lou. He is running to replace John Boehner in Ohio's 8 in an election that has what, Stacey?
National consequences, and given
I
treat Boehner
right.
for a truck full of falafel, you know.
You damn Skippy lady. You got those keys?
I do. Let's get up on out of here.
All right, folks, remember now with the advertising at the end of our outro, stick around to JD's special little twist for the Viagra commercial. Stacey, what's going on in the world between now and Thursday?
Oh, my goodness. Hopefully the news cycle's going to slow down.
Good Lord, baby, we're backed up. We got enough for 10 shows. Everybody check out Game On JD on the Twitters because he'll be back. And, of course, I'm going to be in alleyways, bar stools, places I shouldn't be, but I'll sure as hell be here Thursday at 9 o'clock. Thanks, kids.
I'm looking for you, you Occupy freaks with your glitter bombs. Bring it on! Bring on the glitter. Everything has changed. Everything has changed in the last few years. Conservatives used to take it, and we're not taking it anymore.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. And then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-513-6154. That's 1-800-513-6154. Again, 1-800-513-6154. Call now.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
Giggity, 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 let's have sex.